The crack of a gunshot pierced the autumn air, sending a murder of crows scattering from the cottonwood trees. Olivia Thornton watched from her bedroom window as her father's body crumpled to the ground in the dusty yard below. Her hands trembled against the weathered sill. A silent scream lodged in her throat as three men on horseback circled what remained of her family's ranch house, like vultures. Wyoming Territory, 1878. A place where fortunes were made and lives were lost with equal measure of brutality and indifference. "Find the deed," growled the tallest rider, his silver spurs catching the last rays of the setting sun as he dismounted. "And find the girl." Olivia backed away from the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had exactly 3 minutes before they would be inside 3 minutes to gather what she could and escape. With shaking hands, she pulled her father's old saddlebag from beneath her bed and stuffed it with the few possessions she couldn't bear to leave behind. Her mother's locket, the deed to the ranch carefully hidden inside a hollowed-out Bible, and the small derringer her father had insisted she learn to use. "A woman alone in this territory needs protection," he'd told her on her 18th birthday last spring. Now, just 6 months later, she understood what he meant. The sound of boots on the porch steps sent her scrambling toward the back window. Olivia slipped out onto the sloped roof of the kitchen addition, wincing as loose shingles skittered down. She paused at the edge, the 12-foot drop looking far more intimidating than it had when she'd snuck out as a girl. The crash of the front door being kicked in made the decision for her. She jumped, landing hard and rolling as her father had taught her. Pain shot through her ankle, but she bit back a cry and limped toward the stable. Her mare Penny nickered softly as Olivia hastily threw on a saddle. "Shh, girl," she whispered, hands working deftly despite her fear. "We need to be quiet now." The sound of breaking glass and men's shouts spurred her onward. She led Penny through the back of the stable, mounting swiftly once they reached the cover of the pine trees that lined the eastern edge of the property. "She's gone," a voice bellowed from the house. "Check the stable." Olivia dug her heels into Penny's sides, and they took off into the gathering darkness, leaving behind everything she'd ever known. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't look back. Looking back meant death, and Olivia Thornton wasn't ready to die. She rode through the night, following the North Star as her father had taught her. By dawn, her thighs were chafed raw, and her eyes burned with exhaustion, but she'd put nearly 30 miles between herself and the men who'd murdered her father. The rising sun revealed a small creek, and Olivia guided Penny toward it. The mare drank gratefully while Olivia splashed cold water on her face, trying to wash away the horror of the previous day. Her reflection in the still water startled her wild-eyed, dirt-streaked, hair tangled and coming loose from its pins. She hardly recognized herself. "What now?" she whispered. The first words she'd spoken since fleeing. The vast Wyoming wilderness offered no answer, only the distant cry of a hawk hunting its breakfast. Survival first, she decided, then vengeance. With renewed determination, she remounted Penny and continued westward, toward the mining town of Promise Creek. Her father had mentioned a friend there, a man who might help her. It was her only hope. 3 days later, Olivia reached Promise Creek, a rough collection of wooden buildings straddling a meandering creek where gold had been discovered 5 years prior. The boom had passed, but the town remained, servicing the few mines still operating and the ranches scattered across the territory. She'd avoided the main trails, taking a longer route to throw off any pursuit. Her food had run out the day before, and her stomach growled painfully as she guided Penny down the main street. Curious glances followed her. A young woman alone was a rarity in these parts. The Silver Dollar Saloon dominated the north end of the street, its freshly painted sign a stark contrast to the weathered buildings surrounding it. Olivia hesitated outside, knowing that respectable women didn't enter such establishments, but desperation outweighed propriety. Tying Penny to the hitching post, she squared her shoulders and pushed through the batwing doors. The piano player faltered mid-note as conversation died. A dozen pairs of eyes turned to stare at her. "I'm looking for a man named Jameson," she announced, her voice steadier than she felt. "Walter Jameson." A burly man behind the bar set down the glass he'd been polishing. "Walt's been dead 2 winters now, miss. Pneumonia took him." The news hit Olivia like a physical blow, her last hope gone. Her knees weakened and she grabbed the nearest table to steady herself. "You all right, miss?" the bartender asked, concern creasing his weathered face. Before she could answer, the batwing doors swung open again. The silhouette of a tall man filled the doorway, backlit by the bright midday sun. As he stepped into the dimness of the saloon, Olivia caught her breath. Broad-shouldered and lean-hipped, he moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to danger. A star-shaped badge glinted on his leather vest. "Sheriff?" the bartender nodded. "This young lady's looking for Walt Jameson." The sheriff's eyes, a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin, assessed Olivia quickly. "Jameson's been gone a while. I'm Sheriff Knox Callahan. Maybe I can help instead." Olivia hesitated. She'd come seeking Walter Jameson because her father had trusted him, but a sheriff might be exactly what she needed if he wasn't in the pocket of the men who'd killed her father. "I'm Olivia Thornton," she said finally, "Charles Thornton's daughter. Our ranch was attacked 3 days ago. My father is dead, and I believe the men responsible are after this." She patted the saddlebag containing the deed. Sheriff Callahan's expression hardened. "The Raven Creek Ranch?" She nodded. "I heard rumors," he said. "Come to my office. It's not safe to talk here." Olivia followed him outside, acutely aware of the whispers that trailed in their wake. The sheriff's office sat halfway down the street, a solid building with barred windows and a small jail attached to the back. Inside, Callahan gestured to a wooden chair before taking a seat behind his desk. "Tell me everything," he said. The words poured out of her then how the 3 men had ridden up just before sunset, how her father had gone out to meet them, the gunshot, her escape through the window. "I think they wanted our land," she finished. "Father mentioned a railroad coming through." Sheriff Callahan nodded grimly. "The Central Pacific's planning a spur line through the territory. Land with water rights is suddenly worth killing for." He leaned forward. "Did you recognize any of the men?" One had a silver-trimmed saddle and spurs to match. Tall, with a scar across his cheek. She shuddered at the memory. "The others were just hired guns, I think." "Victor Blackwood," Callahan said, his jaw tightening. "He works for the Hollister Mining Company. They've been buying up land all along the proposed route by any means necessary." "Then you believe me?" "I do, but proving it will be difficult." He rubbed his jaw, stubble rasping beneath his fingers. "And keeping you safe while we do so will be even harder." "I don't need protection," Olivia insisted, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "I need justice." Sheriff Callahan studied her for a long moment. "You'll get neither if you're dead, Miss Thornton. Blackwood's not a man who leaves loose ends." "What do you suggest, then?" "For now, you need a safe place to stay." He stood, towering over her. "Mrs. Sullivan runs a boarding house for respectable ladies. I'll take you there, and then we'll figure out our next move." "Our next move?" Olivia echoed. A hint of a smile crossed his face, softening the hard lines. "I've been looking for a way to bring down Hollister and Blackwood for months. You just might be the key." For the first time since her father's murder, Olivia felt a flicker of hope. Mrs. Sullivan's boarding house was a neat 2-story building with lace curtains and a small garden out front, a pocket of civilization amid the ruggedness of Promise Creek. The widow Sullivan herself was a formidable woman in her 50s who took one look at Olivia's exhausted state and immediately bustled her upstairs to a small but clean room. "A hot bath and a meal first," she declared. "Questions can wait." An hour later, Scrubbed clean and dressed in a borrowed nightgown, Olivia sat on the edge of the narrow bed, combing out her damp hair. A soft knock at the door made her start. "It's just me, dear," Mrs. Sullivan called. "I've brought you some supper." The older woman set down a tray loaded with roast chicken, potatoes, and fresh bread. The aroma made Olivia's mouth water, reminding her how long it had been since she'd eaten properly. "Sheriff Callahan explained a bit of your situation," Mrs. Sullivan said, settling into the room's only chair. "Terrible business, but you're safe here for now." Olivia picked up a fork with shaking hands. "Thank you for your kindness." "It's not kindness, child, it's decency." The widow's face softened. This territory could use more of that and less greed. As Olivia ate, Mrs. Sullivan chatted about the town, filling the silence with harmless gossip that required no response. It was exactly what Olivia needed: normalcy amid chaos. "The sheriff," Olivia said finally, setting down her fork. "Can he be trusted?" Mrs. Sullivan's eyebrows rose. "Knox Callahan? Absolutely. He's the most honorable man in 3 counties. Turned down bribes that would make your eyes water." She leaned forward. "Lost his wife and child to fever 5 years back. Threw himself into the law after that. Some say he's got a death wish, taking on the likes of Hollister Mining, but I think he's just got nothing left to lose." The words settled heavily in Olivia's chest. Nothing left to lose. She understood that feeling all too well now. "Get some rest," Mrs. Sullivan said, rising. "Tomorrow will look brighter." But when Olivia finally drifted into an exhausted sleep, her dreams were filled with gunshots and her father's falling body. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a blessed moment she forgot the horror of the past days, but reality crashed back swiftly. Sitting up, she noticed a bundle of clothing at the foot of her bed, a simple blue calico dress and undergarments, clearly left by Mrs. Sullivan. Dressed and feeling somewhat more human, Olivia made her way downstairs. The boarding house was quiet, its other residents already gone about their day. In the kitchen, she found Mrs. Sullivan kneading bread dough. "Good morning, dear. There's coffee on the stove and porridge keeping warm in the oven." "Thank you, but I should find Sheriff Callahan," Olivia said. "We have matters to discuss." Mrs. Sullivan wiped flour from her hands. "He left word. Said to keep you here until he returns from his rounds." She nodded toward the window. "He also posted young Deputy Fletcher outside, just in case." Olivia peered through the lace curtains to see a gangly young man lounging on the porch steps, a rifle across his knees. The sight was both reassuring and alarming. If Sheriff Callahan thought she needed armed protection in broad daylight. "When will he return?" "Mid-afternoon, most likely." Mrs. Sullivan gestured to the dough. "In the meantime, you could help me with the baking. Idle hands breed worry." It was strange how comforting the simple tasks were: kneading dough, slicing apples for pies, scrubbing vegetables for the evening stew. For a few hours, Olivia could almost pretend she was just visiting, that her father was still alive, that her life hadn't shattered into unrecognizable pieces. The illusion cracked when Sheriff Callahan arrived, his expression grim. "Miss Thornton," he said, removing his hat. "We need to talk." In Mrs. Sullivan's small parlor, he delivered the news. "Blackwood's men were in town this morning, asking questions. They're looking for a young woman traveling alone." Olivia's hands twisted in her lap. "They know I survived." "Seems so." He sat across from her, elbows on knees. "I sent a telegram to the territorial marshal in Cheyenne, but it'll be weeks before any official investigation begins. Until then, you're in danger." "What do you propose?" Callahan ran a hand through his dark hair. "We need to get you somewhere safer than Promise Creek. Somewhere Blackwood's men won't think to look." "I won't run," Olivia said firmly. "This is about more than me. It's about stopping men like Blackwood from taking whatever they want through violence." "I agree," But getting yourself killed won't accomplish that. His blue eyes held hers steadily. I have a small cabin about 20 miles north of here. It was where my wife and I lived before I became sheriff. No one associates it with me anymore. You want me to hide? I want you to survive long enough to testify against Blackwood. He leaned forward. You have the deed, and you're an eyewitness. Without you, there's no case. Olivia considered his words. Every instinct screamed against fleeing, against delaying justice for her father. But she couldn't deny the logic. Dead, she could help no one. Very well, she said finally. When do we leave? Tonight. After dark. He stood. Pack whatever Mrs. Sullivan has loaned you. Travel light. As he turned to go, Olivia called after him. Sheriff? Thank you. He paused in the doorway, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the afternoon light. Don't thank me yet, Miss Thornton. We're a long way from setting things right. But in his voice she heard the same determination that burned in her own heart. Night fell, bringing with it a bone-deep chill that reminded Olivia winter wasn't far off. She waited by the back door of the boarding house, wrapped in a wool cloak Mrs. Sullivan had insisted she take. It belonged to my daughter, the widow had said, brushing away Olivia's protests. She's in California now, married to a banker. Has no use for Wyoming winters anymore. The soft crunch of boots on gravel announced Sheriff Callahan's arrival. He appeared like a shadow, leading 2 horses Penny and a sturdy black gelding. Ready? He asked quietly. Olivia nodded, clutching her saddlebag. Everything she now owned in the world fit inside it, including the precious deed. Mrs. Sullivan emerged from the kitchen to press a bundle into Olivia's hands. Food for the journey, she whispered. God go with you both. They slipped through the back garden and down an alley, avoiding the main street. Promise Creek was mostly quiet at this hour, with activity concentrated around the saloons. Still, Callahan led them on a circuitous route, taking narrow paths between buildings until they reached the northern edge of town. We'll ride hard for the first few miles, he said as they mounted, then cut east into the foothills where the tracks won't be as obvious. Olivia adjusted her skirts, grateful that Mrs. P.P. Sullivan had provided her with practical clothing rather than the fashionable but impractical dresses she'd worn back east at finishing school. I can keep up, she assured him. Growing up on a ranch had made her a capable rider. Callahan nodded once, then urged his horse forward. Olivia followed, and soon they were galloping across the open plain, the lights of Promise Creek receding behind them. The night was clear, stars blazing overhead in a dazzling display that had always made Olivia feel small, yet significant. Her father had taught her the constellations when she was young, spinning tales of ancient heroes and beasts, eternalized in the heavens. The thought of him brought fresh pain, but she channeled it into determination. She would see justice done, no matter the cost. After an hour of hard riding, Callahan slowed, guiding them toward a line of trees that marked a small creek. We'll water the horses here, he said, dismounting. Then head into rougher country. Olivia slid from Penny's back, her legs protesting the unaccustomed exertion. She stretched, trying to work out the stiffness while Callahan checked his gelding's hooves. You ride well, he commented, straightening. Not many Eastern ladies would manage that pace. I'm not an Eastern lady, she replied. Not anymore. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. No, I suppose you're not. They continued onward, the terrain gradually changing as they entered the foothills. Pine trees rose around them, their scent sharp in the cold air. The trail narrowed, forcing them to ride single file, with Callahan leading the way. Dawn was breaking when they finally reached their destination, a small cabin nestled in a clearing, with a stream bubbling nearby and a corral for the horses. It was simple, but solid, built of thick logs that would keep out the winter chill. It's not much, Callahan said as he helped Olivia dismount, his hands strong and steady at her waist. But it's defensible, and the chimney's designed not to show much smoke. Inside, the cabin was sparse but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a small kitchen area opposite. A curtain partially divided the space, concealing what appeared to be a bed. "I'll take care of the horses," Callahan said, setting down her saddlebag. "Make yourself at home." Alone in the cabin, Olivia explored her temporary refuge. There were signs of the sheriff's former life everywhere: a woman's touch in the faded curtains, a child's carved wooden horse on the mantel. Mrs. Sullivan had mentioned his loss, but seeing the evidence made it painfully real. By the time Callahan returned, she had swept the floor and laid a fire in the grate, ready for lighting. "You didn't have to do that," he said, removing his hat and coat. "I'm not a guest to be waited on, Sheriff. If we're to share this space, I'll do my part." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. And it's Knox. Out here." Sheriff feels a bit formal. "Knox," she repeated, testing the name. "Then you must call me Olivia." He struck a match, lighting the fire she'd prepared. Orange flames licked at the dry wood, casting dancing shadows across his face. "How old are you, Olivia?" 18. 19 in April. She knew what he was thinking, that she was little more than a girl. "Old enough to know my own mind," she added firmly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I don't doubt that." He stood, towering over her even across the room. "You should rest. I'll keep watch." Exhaustion crashed over her suddenly, the adrenaline of the past days draining away. She swayed slightly on her feet. Knox was beside her instantly, a steadying hand on her elbow. "When did you last sleep properly?" "I don't remember," she admitted. He guided her toward the curtained area. "Take the bed. I'll wake you if there's any trouble." Too tired to argue, Olivia sank onto the straw mattress. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Knox Callahan silhouetted against the firelight, a guardian between her and the dangers of the world. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of chopping wood. For a disorienting moment, Olivia thought she was back at the ranch, that her father was outside preparing for the day. Then reality flooded back, and with it, grief. Pushing aside the curtain, she found the cabin empty but warm. Through the window, she could see Knox splitting logs with powerful strokes, his shirt damp with exertion despite the cool air. She splashed water from a basin onto her face and smoothed her hair as best she could, conscious suddenly of her appearance. It was foolish vanity, given their circumstances, but something about Knox Callahan made her want to look more presentable than a fugitive should. When she stepped outside, he paused mid-swing, axe held easily in one hand. "Good morning," he said. "There's coffee inside." "I saw, thank you." She hesitated, then asked, "What's our plan?" Knox set down the axe and wiped his brow with a forearm. "We wait. I left instructions with Deputy Fletcher to send word when the marshal arrives from Cheyenne." "And how long will that be?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. He must have seen the dismay on her face because he added, "I know it's not ideal, but it's our best chance at building a case against Blackwood and Hollister." 3 weeks of hiding while her father's killers walked free. The thought was bitter, but Olivia nodded. "Then we wait." They fell into a routine over the next days. Knox taught Olivia how to shoot with more precision than her father had, using targets set up behind the cabin. She learned to recognize the sounds of the forest, to move quietly through the underbrush, to distinguish between animal tracks and human footprints. In return, she took over the cooking, turning the simple provisions they had into meals that were more than just sustenance. She mended Knox's shirts when she found them fraying, and cleaned the cabin until it gleamed. They talked too. At first, just practical matters, but gradually their conversations deepened. Knox told her about his wife, Margaret, and their daughter Emma, who had been just 4 when scarlet fever took them both within days of each other. "I went a little mad after," he admitted one evening as they sat before the fire. "Took on any dangerous job I could find. Marshall Hardin found me drunk and bleeding in a Cheyenne alley and knocked some sense into me. Said if I was determined to die, I might as well do some good first." "Is that why you became sheriff? To do good?" Knox poked at the fire, sending sparks dancing up the chimney. "Partly. Partly to have a position where I might one day hold men like Hollister accountable." "And have you? Held anyone accountable?" His eyes, reflecting the firelight, met hers. "Not yet, but I will." In turn, Olivia told him about her life, her childhood on the ranch, the 3 years at finishing school in Boston that her father had insisted upon, her return to Wyoming just a year ago when her mother died. "He wanted me to stay east, to marry well and have an easier life than my mother had," she said. "But this is my home. I couldn't abandon it." "And now?" Knox asked softly. "After all this?" Olivia stared into the flames. "Now I don't know. The ranch was everything to my father. To me. But even if we bring Blackwood to justice, I don't know if I can go back there alone." Knox didn't offer empty reassurances, and she was grateful for that. Instead, he simply said, "You have time to decide." But time, it turned out, was not on their side. On the 10th day at the cabin, Knox returned from checking his traps with a troubled expression. "What is it?" Olivia asked, setting down the shirt she was mending. "Tracks. Boot prints, not moccasins, about a mile south." He began checking his revolver. "Could be hunters, but you don't think so?" He shook his head. "They were trying to hide their trail. Hunters don't do that." Fear, which had receded during their peaceful days at the cabin, surged back. "Blackwood's men? Possibly, or it could be the Hastings gang. They've been known to raid isolated homesteads." He strapped on his gun belt. "Either way, we need to be prepared." Olivia rose, determination replacing fear. "What do you need me to do?" Knox's eyes softened momentarily. "You're a remarkable woman, Olivia Thornton." The unexpected praise warmed her cheeks, but she straightened her shoulders. "I'm a survivor. Now, tell me the plan." Together, they prepared the cabin for a possible attack, boarding windows, positioning furniture to create barriers, checking and loading every weapon. As dusk fell, Knox positioned himself by the front window while Olivia kept watch at the back. "If shooting starts," he told her, "you slip out through the root cellar and into the trees. Head east until you reach the old trapper's cabin I showed you." "I won't leave you to face them alone," she protested. Knox's expression hardened. "This isn't a debate, Olivia. You're the witness. Without you, there's no case against Blackwood." Before she could argue further, a twig snapped outside. Both froze, listening intently. The night had gone too quiet, no insects chirping, no nocturnal animals moving about. "They're here," Knox whispered. A voice called from the darkness. "Callahan, we know you're in there. Send out the Thornton girl and maybe we'll let you live." Knox's jaw tightened. "Victor Blackwood," he murmured to Olivia. "I'd recognize that snake's voice anywhere." "We just want the deed, girl," Blackwood continued. "Your father was too stubborn to sell. Don't make his mistake." Olivia's hands tightened on her rifle. "He murdered my father," she whispered. "And he'll pay for it," Knox promised. "But not tonight. Tonight we survive." He moved to the back window, checking the darkness. "I count at least 5 men, spread out around the cabin." "What do we do?" Knox's mind worked rapidly. "We need to even the odds. I'm going out there." "That's suicide." "Not if I have surprise on my side." He gripped her shoulders. "Listen carefully. When I fire the first shot, they'll focus on me. That's when you slip out through the root cellar. Take Penny, she's the quieter of the 2 horses. Ride for Promise Creek. Not the trapper's cabin. They'll expect you to hide, not head back to town. I told you I won't leave you. Damn it, Olivia. His voice was fierce but low. This isn't about you or me. It's about justice. Your father deserves that, and you're the only one who can make it happen. The truth of his words cut through her resistance. With a heavy heart, she nodded. Knox checked his revolvers one last time. Give me 5 minutes to circle around, then be ready to move. Before she could respond, he did something completely unexpected. He pulled her close and pressed his lips to hers in a brief, fierce kiss. For luck, he murmured, then slipped out the back door into the darkness. Olivia stood frozen, her lips tingling from the unexpected contact. Then reality reasserted itself, and she moved swiftly to prepare. She stuffed the deed into her bodice, pulled on her coat, and strapped on the small derringer. 4 minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Then the night exploded with gunfire. Knox's voice bellowed from somewhere to the left of the cabin. Drop your weapons, Blackwood. You're surrounded. Confused shouts followed, then more gunfire. Olivia didn't wait to see what happened next. She lifted the trapdoor to the root cellar and slipped down into the earthen darkness, feeling her way along the narrow tunnel that Knox had shown her, just in case. Emerging behind a thicket of juniper, she crouched low and moved toward the corral where the horses were tethered. Gunfire continued to erupt sporadically around the cabin, punctuated by men's shouts. Penny whickered softly as Olivia approached. Working quickly, she saddled the mare and led her away from the noise, staying low among the trees. Only when they were a quarter-mile from the cabin did she mount and urge Penny into a gallop. Behind her, a man shouted, "The girl's escaping! North side!" A bullet whizzed past her ear, spurring her to ride faster. She bent low over Penny's neck, making herself as small a target as possible as they raced through the trees. More shots followed, but soon they were out of range. Still, Olivia didn't slow. Knox had sacrificed himself to give her this chance, and she wouldn't waste it. The thought of Knox facing Blackwood's men alone brought a lump to her throat. That unexpected kiss replayed in her mind the warmth of his lips, the scratch of his stubble against her skin, the unspoken emotions behind the gesture. She'd known him less than 2 weeks, yet somehow Knox Callahan had become incredibly important to her. More than just an ally, a friend, a protector, and perhaps something more that she hadn't dared name. Now she might never see him again. No, she said aloud, determination hardening within her. I won't accept that. Olivia altered her course. Knox had told her to ride for Promise Creek, but she had a different plan. If she could reach the territorial road, she might intercept the marshal's party coming from Cheyenne. Knox had said they were expected any day now. It was a gamble, but one worth taking. With renewed purpose, she urged Penny onward through the moonlit night. Dawn found her at a crossroads, exhausted but resolute. She'd pushed Penny hard, and the mare needed rest. Dismounting, Olivia led her to a small stream to drink while scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. The eastern road stretched empty before her, winding through rolling hills toward Cheyenne. If the marshal was coming, it would be from that direction. A sudden movement caught her eye, a dust cloud in the distance. Riders, moving fast. Friend or foe, she couldn't tell from this distance. Olivia led Penny behind a stand of boulders, heart pounding as she watched the approaching party. As they drew closer, she counted 5 men, all wearing dusters. At their head rode a tall figure with an unmistakable bearing of authority. The marshal's party. It had to be. Relief made her knees weak, but Olivia forced herself to remain cautious. She waited until they were close enough to make out the gleam of badges before stepping out onto the road, leading Penny. The riders pulled up sharply, hands moving to weapons. "Who are you, miss?" called the lead rider, a grizzled man with a thick mustache. "Olivia Thornton," she replied. "Are you Marshal Jenkins?" The man's eyebrows rose. "I am." And you're the witness Sheriff Callahan telegraphed about. Yes, sir. And the sheriff needs your help immediately. Victor Blackwood and his men attacked us last night at the cabin. Knox Sheriff Callahan stayed behind to give me a chance to escape. The marshal's expression darkened. Blackwood, eh? Been wanting to get my hands on that snake for years. He turned to his deputies. Carson, escort Miss Thornton to Promise Creek. The rest of you, with me. No, Olivia said firmly. I'm going with you. Miss Thornton, this is no place for a woman? She interrupted. Marshal Jenkins, I've witnessed these men murder my father. I've ridden 30 miles through the night to find you. I can handle myself, and I won't be left behind. The marshal studied her for a long moment, taking in her determined stance and the revolver at her hip. Finally, he gave a curt nod. Stay behind us, and if there's trouble, you do exactly as I say. Clear? Crystal clear, Olivia agreed, mounting Penny once more. They rode hard, retracing her path toward the cabin. With each mile, Olivia's anxiety grew. What would they find? Was Knox alive? Had Blackwood's men burned the cabin? The questions tormented her, but she kept pace with the lawmen, refusing to show weakness. As they approached the final ridge overlooking the clearing, Marshal Jenkins raised a hand, signaling a halt. We go in careful, he said quietly. No telling what we're riding into. They dismounted, tethering their horses, and proceeded on foot. Cresting the ridge, they looked down on a scene that made Olivia's heart stutter. The cabin still stood, but the door hung askew on broken hinges. 2 bodies lay in the yard, Blackwood's men, judging by their clothing. Of Knox or Blackwood himself, there was no sign. Spread out, the marshal ordered his men. Check the cabin and the surrounding area. Miss Thornton, stay with me. They moved cautiously down the slope. As they neared the cabin, a groan came from behind the woodpile. The marshal drew his revolver, motioning for Olivia to stay back. But when he rounded the stack of split logs, he immediately holstered his weapon. Callahan, you look like hell, son. Olivia pushed past the marshal to see Knox propped against the woodpile, his shirt soaked with blood, a makeshift bandage wrapped around his left thigh. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, but he was undeniably alive. Knox! She cried, dropping to her knees beside him. His good eye widened at the sight of her. Olivia? What are you doing here? You were supposed to go to Promise Creek. I had a better idea, she said, her voice breaking as relief washed over her. I found the marshal on the Territorial Road. Knox looked past her to Jenkins. Your timing's impeccable, Marshal. Looks like you've been having quite a party without us, Jenkins replied dryly. Where's Blackwood? Knox grimaced. Got away. Took one of my bullets in the shoulder, but he's still riding. 2 of his men are dead. 1 wounded and tied up in the root cellar. The other ran off with Blackwood. The marshal nodded to his deputies, who moved to secure the prisoner. We'll get a posse together, track them down. Blackwood first, Knox insisted. He's the key to Hollister. Get him to talk, and you can bring down the whole operation. First, we get you patched up, Olivia interjected, examining his wounds with gentle hands. You've lost a lot of blood. Knox caught her wrist, his fingers warm despite his pallor. You came back, he said softly, wonderingly. Of course I did. She met his gaze steadily. They'll take everything from you, my father said the day before he died. He meant Blackwood and his kind. Men who think they can take whatever they want through violence and intimidation. Knox's thumb traced circles on her inner wrist. Not you, he murmured. They can't take you. It was an echo of what he'd told her that first night in the marshal's office, but now the words held a deeper meaning, a promise, a declaration. Olivia's heart swelled. No, she agreed. They can't take me. Marshal Jenkins cleared his throat behind them. Let's get the sheriff back to town. Dr. Wilson can tend to those wounds properly. With the help of the deputies, they managed to get Knox onto his horse, though the effort left him pale and sweating. Olivia rode beside him, ready to catch him if he swayed. The journey to Promise Creek took twice as long as it should have, with frequent stops when Knox's strength flagged. By the time they reached town, darkness had fallen again, and Knox was barely conscious. Dr. Wilson met them at his office, alerted by one of the deputies who'd ridden ahead. "Bring him in," the doctor directed, leading the way to an examination table. Olivia tried to follow, but Mrs. Sullivan appeared as if by magic, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Let the doctor work, dear. You look dead on your feet yourself." "I need to know he'll be all right," Olivia protested. "And you will. But standing there covered in blood and dirt won't help him heal faster." The older woman steered her firmly toward the boarding house. "Bath, food, rest, in that order. Then you can worry about Sheriff Callahan." Too exhausted to argue, Olivia allowed herself to be led away. The events of the past day, the attack, the desperate ride, finding Knox wounded caught up with her all at once. She barely remembered the bath or the meal Mrs. Sullivan provided before collapsing into bed. She woke to mid-morning sunlight and the sounds of Promise Creek going about its business outside her window. For a moment, disorientation gripped her, then memory flooded back. "Knox," she gasped, sitting up abruptly. Mrs. Sullivan looked up from her mending in the corner chair. "Good morning to you, too," she said dryly. "The sheriff's alive? Before you ask. Lost a fair amount of blood, but the doctor says he'll recover if infection doesn't set in." Relief made Olivia sag back against the pillows. "Thank God." "Indeed." The widow set aside her sewing. "Marshal Jenkins would like to speak with you when you're ready. He's taking your statement about your father's murder and what happened at the cabin." Olivia nodded, pushing back the covers. "I'll dress immediately." "Breakfast first," Mrs. Sullivan insisted. "Justice can wait another half hour." After a substantial meal that she hadn't realized she needed, Olivia made her way to the sheriff's office, where Marshal Jenkins had set up temporary headquarters. The lawman greeted her with unexpected respect. "Miss Thornton, feeling better after some rest?" "Yes, thank you." She took the seat he offered. "Has there been any word on Blackwood?" "Not yet. I've got men following his trail, but he had a good head start." Jenkins pulled out a notepad. "Now, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Leave nothing out, no matter how small it seems." For the next 2 hours, Olivia relived the worst days of her life: her father's murder, her escape, the attack at the cabin. She produced the deed from her bodice, explaining its significance in relation to the railroad's planned route. When she finished, Jenkins nodded thoughtfully. "This matches what Callahan told me. Between your testimony and his, plus the wounded man we captured, we've got a solid case against Blackwood. And if we can get Blackwood to turn on Hollister, will that be enough? To bring justice for my father?" The marshal's eyes were kind but realistic. "It won't bring him back, Miss Thornton, but it will ensure the men responsible face the hangman's noose." It wasn't the comfort she sought, but it was the truth. Olivia nodded, accepting it. "Can I see Sheriff Callahan now?" "Dr. Wilson's office is just down the street. I believe he's awake and asking for you." A small smile touched the marshal's weathered face. Quite insistently, in fact. Olivia hurried to the doctor's small infirmary, her heart beating a rapid tattoo against her ribs. Outside the door, she paused, suddenly nervous. What would she say to him? That unexpected kiss before the attack had changed something between them, opened a door she hadn't known existed. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. "Come in," called Dr. Wilson's voice. The doctor was rebandaging Knox's thigh when she entered. Knox was propped up on pillows, his torso bare except for bandages wrapped around his ribs. Despite his injuries, his face brightened visibly when he saw her. "I'll give you a few minutes," Dr. Wilson said, gathering his supplies. "Don't tire him out. he added to Olivia as he passed. Alone with Knox, Olivia found herself suddenly shy. She approached the bed slowly, taking in the extent of his injuries in the clear light of day, the bruised face, the bandaged ribs, the heavily wrapped thigh. "You look terrible," she said, attempting levity. A smile cracked through his serious expression. "You should see the other fellow." I did. Two of them, in fact. She perched on the edge of the chair beside his bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I lost an argument with a grizzly bear." He shifted, wincing. "But I'll heal." His good eyes searched her face. "You came back. With the marshal. I couldn't leave you to face them alone." "It was reckless," he admonished, but without heat. "And brave. Incredibly brave." Olivia looked down at her hands. "I was terrified, actually. The thought of losing you." She faltered, uncertain how to express the depth of emotion she'd discovered within herself. Knox reached for her hand, his touch gentle despite the calluses that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. "Before you escaped," he said carefully, "I took a liberty." "You kissed me," she confirmed, meeting his gaze. "I did. And I'd like to apologize if it was unwelcome." "It wasn't." The words came out more forcefully than she'd intended, and a blush heated her cheeks. "That is, I didn't mind." Something kindled in his eyes, hope, perhaps, or the same unnamed emotion that had been growing within her. "Olivia," he began, then hesitated. "I know we've known each other only a short time, and that time has been unusual, to say the least." "That's one way to describe it," she agreed with a small smile. "What I'm trying to say, badly, is that I care for you. More than I should, perhaps, given our circumstances. More than I thought possible after Margaret." His thumb traced patterns on her palm. "I understand if you don't feel the same, or if you need time." Olivia leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, silencing his words. The kiss was gentle, mindful of his injuries, but unmistakable in its intent. When she pulled back, Knox looked stunned. "That was unexpected." "Was it?" she asked. "After everything we've been through together?" He smiled, the expression transforming his bruised face. "Perhaps not." His hand cupped her cheek. "But what happens now, Olivia? Blackwood is still out there, and even when he's caught, your ranch." The question sobered her. What did happen now? The future stretched before her, full of uncertainties. "I don't know," she admitted. "The ranch was my home, but I'm not sure I can go back there, not after what happened." "You could sell it," Knox suggested. "Once this is over, once your name is cleared, use the money to build a new life somewhere." "And where would that be?" His gaze held hers steadily. "Wherever you want. Cheyenne, Denver, or here." "Here? In Promise Creek?" "It's a growing town. They're talking about building a proper schoolhouse next year. They'll need a teacher." Olivia tilted her head. "Are you suggesting I become a school teacher, Sheriff Callahan?" "I'm suggesting you consider your options." His voice softened. "One of which might include a future with me, if you're amenable." The boldness of the statement took her breath away. "Are you proposing, Knox?" "Not officially. Not yet." He squeezed her hand. "But I want you to know that when this is all over, when Blackwood and Hollister face justice, I intend to court you properly, if you'll allow it." Joy bubbled up within her, unexpected but welcome after days of fear and grief. "I think I'd like that very much." A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Dr. Wilson poked his head in. "Time's up, I'm afraid. The sheriff needs rest." Olivia stood reluctantly. "I'll come back tomorrow." Knox held onto her hand a moment longer. "Promise?" "Promise," she whispered and sealed it with another brief kiss. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Marshal Jenkins organized a manhunt for Blackwood, sending telegrams to every law enforcement officer in the territory. Olivia gave formal statements, met with the territorial judge, and began the process of securing her legal claim to the Raven Creek Ranch. Each day, she visited Knox as he recovered, their relationship deepening through long conversations and shared hopes for the future. By the time he was strong enough to leave the doctor's care, moving to a room at the hotel, Olivia knew with certainty that what she felt for him was love. It was a quieter emotion than she'd expected. Not the wild passion of novels, but something steadier, a deep current that strengthened her rather than swept her away. In Knox, she'd found not just a protector, but a partner, someone who saw her strength and courage and valued them. On a crisp October morning, news arrived that changed everything. Victor Blackwood had been captured in a mining camp near the Montana border, wounded and feverish. Under questioning, he'd implicated George Hollister in not just the Thornton murder, but a dozen other crimes across the territory. "It's over," Knox told her as they sat on Mrs. Sullivan's porch that evening. His leg was still stiff, requiring the use of a cane, but he insisted on walking Olivia back to the boarding house each night. "Hollister was arrested in Cheyenne this afternoon. The judge is calling for a special court session next month." Olivia leaned against the porch railing, watching the sunset paint Promise Creek in gold and amber. "It doesn't feel real yet." "It will." Knox moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You'll testify, they'll hang, and justice will be done." "And then?" He turned to face her. "And then, Olivia Thornton, I have a question for you." Her heart skipped a beat as Knox reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. From it, he extracted a simple gold band with a modest pearl. "It was my mother's," he said, answering her unspoken question. "Nothing fancy, but honest, like her." "Knox," she breathed, her hand flying to her throat. He took her other hand in his. "I know it's fast. I know we've known each other only a matter of weeks. But some things you just know, deep in your bones." His blue eyes held hers, earnest and unwavering. "I love you, Olivia. I want to build a life with you, here in Promise Creek or wherever you want to go." Tears blurred her vision, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Knox Callahan, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit as though made for her. When he kissed her, it held all the promise of their future together, gentle but passionate, strong but tender. Mrs. Sullivan found them there minutes later, still wrapped in each other's arms. Her delighted exclamation brought them back to reality, blushing like teenagers caught stealing kisses behind the schoolhouse. "Well, it's about time," the widow declared, beaming at them. "I've been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. When's the wedding?" Knox looked to Olivia, leaving the decision to her. "After the trial," she decided, "once everything with Blackwood and Hollister is finished, a new beginning." The trial was held in Cheyenne in late November, a highly publicized affair that drew spectators from across the territory. Olivia testified calmly and clearly, her voice steady as she recounted her father's murder and the subsequent events. Knox sat in the gallery, his supportive presence giving her strength. Victor Blackwood and George Hollister were found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced them to hang on the first day of the new year, 1879. "Poetic justice," Knox remarked as they left the courthouse. "A new year, free of their kind of corruption." Olivia tucked her hand into the crook of his arm as they walked through Cheyenne's busy streets. "What about the ranch?" she asked. It was a question that had troubled her throughout the proceedings. Knox considered for a moment. "It's yours, legally and morally. You could sell it, or we could try to make a go of it together." "Together," she repeated, tasting the word. "I like the sound of that. But the memories are painful," He finished for her, understanding in his eyes. She nodded. Every time I think of riding up that path, I see my father falling. Then we sell, Knox said simply. Use the money to build something new. A legacy your father would be proud of. 3 weeks later, on Christmas Eve, Olivia Thornton became Olivia Callahan in a small ceremony at Promise Creek's newly completed church. Mrs. Sullivan wept openly in the front pew, while Marshall Jenkins stood as Knox's best man. Olivia wore a simple white dress ordered from Cheyenne, her mother's locket around her neck. Knox, resplendent in a new black suit, watched her walk down the aisle with an expression of such tenderness that it brought tears to her eyes. I never thought I'd find happiness again, he told her later that night, as they stood in the doorway of their new home, a small but sturdy house on the edge of Promise Creek, purchased with the first installment from the sale of the Raven Creek Ranch. You gave me back hope, Olivia. She leaned into his embrace, savoring the solid warmth of him. And you gave me courage when I needed it most. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting Promise Creek in pristine white. A new beginning, Olivia thought, a chance to build something meaningful from the ashes of tragedy. They'll take everything from you, she murmured, remembering her father's warning. Knox's arms tightened around her. Not you, he whispered against her hair. Never you. And in that promise, Olivia found her future. Spring came to Promise Creek in a riot of wildflowers and new beginnings. Olivia stood on the porch of the schoolhouse, watching as her students raced homeward, their lessons complete for the day. The position of teacher had come open just as Knox had predicted, and with her Eastern education, Olivia had been the town council's unanimous choice. Knox appeared at the edge of the schoolyard, his badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. He no longer needed the cane, though he still favored his left leg slightly when tired. Mrs. Callahan, he called, removing his hat as he approached. May I escort you home? You may, Sheriff Callahan, she replied with a smile, gathering her books. They walked arm in arm through Promise Creek, exchanging greetings with townspeople along the way. In the 5 months since their wedding, they'd become fixtures in the community, the respected sheriff and his schoolteacher wife, building a life from the wreckage of the past. Letter came for you today, Knox said as they turned onto their street. From Boston. Olivia's eyebrows rose. My aunt, perhaps? The envelope had a law firm's name. Curious, Olivia quickened her pace. Inside their home, Knox handed her the official-looking letter. She broke the seal and scanned the contents, her expression changing from confusion to shock. What is it? Knox asked, concerned. It's about my mother's family. Olivia looked up, dazed. Her brother, my uncle, has died. Apparently, he was quite wealthy, and with no children of his own. She shook her head in disbelief. Knox. He's left everything to me. His house in Boston, his business interests, everything. Knox sat beside her, taking this in. That's unexpected. I barely knew him. He and Mother had a falling out years ago. She reread the letter. The lawyers say the estate is worth over $50,000. Good Lord. Knox let out a low whistle. That's a fortune. Olivia set the letter down, her mind racing. What do we do with it? It's your inheritance, Knox said carefully. Your decision. No. She took his hand. Our decision. We're partners in this life, remember? His eyes softened. I remember. They discussed it over dinner, the possibilities, the responsibilities, the future. This unexpected windfall opened before them. We could move to Boston, Olivia suggested tentatively. Take over Uncle Edward's shipping business. Knox considered this, then shook his head. You might belong in Boston society, my love, but I never would. I'm a frontier lawman, not a businessman. Then we stay here, she decided. But we could use some of the money to help Promise Creek grow. The town needs a proper hospital, and the school is already too small. A slow smile spread across Knox's face. Always thinking of others. It's one of the things I love most about you. Later, as they prepared for bed, Olivia felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She sat quickly on the edge of the mattress, waiting for it to pass. It was the third time this week. Olivia. Knox's voice was concerned. Are you unwell? She looked up at him, a suspicion forming that had nothing to do with her uncle's inheritance. I'm not sure, she said slowly, but I think I might be expecting. Knox froze, halfway through unbuttoning his shirt. Expecting? As in, a baby, she confirmed, a tremulous smile forming. Our baby. In 2 strides, he was kneeling before her, his hands gentle on her still flat stomach. Are you certain? Not entirely, but I'm late, and the nausea. She covered his hands with hers. Dr. Wilson could confirm it. Wonder transformed Knox's face. A child, he whispered. Then louder with growing excitement. A child! He lifted her from the bed and spun her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, his expression turned serious. I lost a child once, he said quietly. The pain nearly destroyed me. But with you, Olivia, I've found the courage to love again, to hope again. His hand cupped her cheek. Thank you for that gift. She leaned into his touch. We'll build a beautiful life for this child, Knox. A legacy of love and courage, not fear and loss. Yes, he agreed, kissing her softly. That's exactly what we'll do. Dr. Wilson confirmed Olivia's suspicion the next day, predicting the baby would arrive in late November. The news, combined with her inheritance, seemed to open a new chapter in their lives, one filled with possibilities. With Knox's support, Olivia established the Thornton Foundation with half of her inheritance, dedicated to improving life in Promise Creek and the surrounding territory. The first projects included expanding the schoolhouse and building a proper medical clinic. Your father would be proud, Knox told her as they watched the groundbreaking for the clinic that summer. You've turned tragedy into something that will help generations to come. Olivia, her pregnancy now visible beneath her summer dress, leaned against her husband's strong shoulder. I had help, she said softly. As autumn painted the Wyoming landscape in gold and crimson, Olivia's thoughts turned increasingly to the child growing within her. She and Knox prepared the nursery, converting the small spare room with furniture. Knox crafted himself, and linens Mrs. Sullivan insisted on embroidering. Do you think it's a boy or a girl? Knox asked one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset. Olivia considered, her hands resting on her rounded belly. A girl, I think. Strong and brave, like her father. Or a boy, Knox countered. Compassionate and brilliant, like his mother. Either way, Olivia said, feeling the baby shift beneath her palms. This child will know love, complete, unconditional love. Knox placed his hand beside hers, marveling at the movement. The best legacy we can give. On a snowy November night, after 18 hours of labor, Olivia gave birth to a daughter with Knox's blue eyes and a dusting of dark hair. They named her Charlotte Margaret Callahan Charlotte for Olivia's father, Charles, and Margaret for Knox's first wife. She's perfect, Knox whispered, holding his daughter with reverent hands. Tears shone in his eyes as he looked from the tiny infant to his exhausted but radiant wife. Both of you are perfect. Olivia watched them, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain such joy. From the darkest moment of her life, watching her father fall to Blackwood's bullet had come this miracle. A husband who cherished her, a daughter to love, a purpose that honored her father's memory. I love you, she told Knox as he placed their daughter in her arms. I love our life, our family, everything we've built together. Knox sat beside her on the bed, one arm around her shoulders, the other hand gently stroking Charlotte's cheek. "From the moment you walked into my office in Promise Creek, you changed everything, Olivia. You made me believe in second chances." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing Promise Creek in pristine white. Inside, the Callahan family forged in adversity, strengthened by love, welcomed their future with open hearts. And in the years that followed, as Promise Creek grew and prospered, as Charlotte was joined by a brother and then a sister, as the Thornton Foundation expanded its work throughout the territory, Olivia often remembered that moment in the cabin when Knox had made his promise. "They'll take everything from you," she had feared. "Not you," he had vowed. It was a promise kept, not just in words, but in the life they built together, a legacy of love that neither violence nor greed could ever destroy.